your savings account is a trap. Every dollar you hoard loses value while you sleep. The wealthy don't save, they multiply. What if everything you learned about money was designed to keep you broke? Right now, someone with less money than you is getting richer. They know something you don't. You're about to discover what the top 1% never want you to learn. This will make you uncomfortable. That discomfort is worth millions. Let me start with a question that's going to sting a little bit. How much money do you have sitting in your savings account right now? Don't worry, I'm not asking you to say it out loud. Just think about that number. Hold it in your mind. Now I want you to imagine something. That money is actively working against you, not passively sitting there, harmless and safe, actively destroying your future wealth. Every single day, I know what you're thinking. You've been told your entire life that saving money is responsible. It's what adults do. It's what smart people do. Your parents saved. Your grandparents saved. Every financial advisor you've ever heard on the radio tells you to save 3 to 6 months of expenses. Save for emergencies. Save for retirement. Save, save, save. And you've listened. You've been a good student. You've done exactly what you were told. And that obedience is costing you everything. Here's what nobody tells you about saving money. Inflation is a tax on your patience. Right now, inflation is running somewhere between 3 and 5% annually, depending on how you measure it. That means your money is losing 3 to 5% of its purchasing power every single year. But let's be honest, the real inflation rate on the things you actually need, food, housing, education, healthcare, is much higher than the official numbers. So let's call it 5% to be conservative. If you had $10,000 saved in 2015, and you left it sitting in a savings account earning basically nothing, which is what most savings accounts pay, that $10,000 has the purchasing power of about $7,800 today. You didn't spend a penny of it, and you lost $2,200. The money is still there. The value isn't. But the inflation tax is just the beginning of the problem. The real issue is something economists call opportunity cost, but I'm going to call it what it really is: the cost of being afraid. Every dollar sitting in your savings account is a dollar that isn't working for you. It isn't growing. It isn't multiplying. It isn't building anything. And while your money sits there slowly dying, other people's money is out in the world making more money. This is the difference between the wealthy and everyone else. The wealthy understand that money is a tool, not a trophy. You don't win by accumulating it. You win by deploying it. Let me give you a real example with real numbers. Take two friends. We'll call them Sarah and Marcus. They both graduated college in 2013 with similar degrees and similar entry-level jobs paying about $45,000 a year. Both of them were responsible with money. Both avoided credit card debt. Both lived below their means. But they had very different philosophies about what to do with the money they didn't spend. Sarah was a saver. She'd been taught that the path to wealth was slow and steady. She put 10% of every paycheck into a high-yield savings account. She was proud of this discipline. By 2023, 10 years later, Sarah had accumulated about $60,000 in savings. Not bad, right? She felt secure. She had a cushion. She could handle an emergency. She was doing everything right according to conventional wisdom. Marcus was different. He kept 3 months of expenses in savings for true emergencies, about $10,000. Everything else he earned beyond his living expenses he deployed. He started by investing in himself. He took online courses in digital marketing and web design. Cost him about $3,000 over 2 years. Those skills allowed him to freelance on the side, which brought in an extra $15,000 in year 3. He took that $15,000 and bought rental property in a college town with a low down payment, using leverage. The cash flow from that property was modest at first, about $300 a month after expenses. But it was cash flow he didn't have to work for. He used that cash flow plus some savings to buy another property in year 5. By year 7, he had 4 rental properties generating about $1,800 a month in passive income. He also started a small digital marketing agency with 2 partners, investing about $20,000 for a third of the business. By year 10, his ownership stake in that agency was worth about $200,000, and it was paying him about $40,000 a year in distributions. His rental properties had appreciated and were generating $30,000 a year in cash flow. His total net worth in 2023 was north of $800,000. Same starting point. Same 10-year time frame. Sarah had $60,000 and felt safe. Marcus had $800,000 and multiple income streams. The difference wasn't intelligence. It wasn't luck. It wasn't family money or connections. The difference was philosophy. Sarah saved. Marcus deployed. Sarah avoided risk. Marcus managed risk. Sarah stayed comfortable. Marcus got comfortable being uncomfortable. Now here's the really painful part. Sarah's $60,000 in savings gave her a psychological feeling of security, but it was a false security. If she lost her job, that $60,000 would cover her expenses for maybe 18 months if she was careful. Then what? She'd be back to zero, looking for another job in her 40s. Marcus, on the other hand, had built systems that generated income whether he worked or not. If he lost his job, his rental properties and business ownership would still generate about $70,000 a year. He didn't have job security. He had income security. There's a massive difference. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. What would your life look like if you'd spent the last 10 years deploying money instead of saving it? What if every dollar you carefully tucked away had instead been invested in skills, in assets, in businesses, in opportunities? Where would you be right now? Who would you be? What would you own? What would your monthly cash flow look like? Sit with that question for a moment, because the gap between where you are and where you could have been, that gap is the cost of your comfort zone. Let's talk about comfort zones, because this is where the real money is hiding. Your comfort zone isn't just a mental state. It's expensive real estate. Every day you spend inside your financial comfort zone has a measurable cost. I'm going to give you a number that might make you uncomfortable. The average person's comfort zone costs them about $274 per day in lost opportunity. That's not money coming out of your bank account. It's money that never makes it in. Over a year, that's $100,000. Over a decade, it's $1 million. This is why comfort is so expensive. It's not that comfort itself costs money. It's that comfort prevents you from taking the actions that would generate wealth. Your brain is wired to keep you broke. I don't mean that as an insult. I mean it literally. Your brain has a structure called the amygdala that's responsible for threat detection. It's ancient. It evolved when our biggest threats were predators and starvation. The amygdala's job is to keep you alive, not to make you wealthy. And to your amygdala, risk and threat are the same thing. When you think about starting a business, your amygdala fires up. When you think about investing money you've saved, your amygdala fires up. When you think about quitting your job to pursue an opportunity, your amygdala absolutely loses its mind. It floods your system with cortisol and makes you feel anxious and afraid. And then you interpret that feeling as your intuition telling you not to do it. But it's not intuition. It's not wisdom. It's just an ancient alarm system that can't tell the difference between a lion and a spreadsheet. The wealthy have the same amygdala you do. The same fear response. The same anxiety about risk. The difference is they've learned to recognize it for what it is and act anyway. They've trained themselves to be more afraid of stagnation than change. More afraid of missing opportunities than losing money. More afraid of who they'll become if they stay comfortable than who they might become if they take calculated risks. This is the fundamental reprogramming that has to happen if you want to build wealth. You have to make your comfort zone more uncomfortable than growth. Let me tell you about the comfort zone tax in concrete terms. Imagine you're making $40,000 a year at a job you're comfortable in. You know the work. You know the people. You know what's expected. There's no stress. You go in, do your thing, go home. It's fine. Not great, but fine. Now imagine there's an opportunity to switch to a commission-based sales role in a growing industry. The base is $30,000, but the realistic earning potential in year one is $60,000 to $70,000, and top performers make over $100,000 by year 3. Your amygdala hears this and freaks out. What if you fail? What if you can't sell? What if you make less money? What if it's stressful? What if you hate it? So you stay at the $40,000 job. That decision, that one decision to stay comfortable, just cost you $20,000 in year 1. If you factor in the growth trajectory over 5 years, someone who takes that sales role and performs even moderately well will earn about $120,000. Think about your own life right now. What safe choice are you making that's costing you? Are you staying in a job that underpays you because it's familiar? Are you avoiding starting a side business because you're afraid of the learning curve? Are you not investing in coaching or courses or mentorship because the price seems high? Are you renting instead of buying because you don't want to deal with the complexity of ownership? Every single one of these decisions has a price tag. The question is whether you're aware of what you're paying. Here's an exercise I want you to try. For the next week, every time you make a financial decision based on comfort or safety, write it down. Don't judge it. Don't change it yet. Just track it. I didn't negotiate my salary because I didn't want to seem greedy. I didn't apply for that position because I wasn't sure I was qualified. I didn't invest in that course because I wanted to keep my savings intact. I didn't start that project because I wasn't sure it would work. Write them all down. Then, for each one, ask yourself this question. If I made the uncomfortable choice instead, what's the best case scenario? Not the guaranteed outcome. The best case. Because here's what you'll discover. The best case scenarios are worth so much more than the comfort you're buying with your safe choices. You're trading millions for the feeling of security, and that feeling isn't even real. Let me paint you a picture. Close your eyes if you're in a place where you can do that safely. Imagine it's 5 years from now. You've continued making the same comfortable financial choices you're making today. The same job or similar. The same saving habits. The same risk avoidance. 5 years from now, you're 5 years older. How much has your life changed? Are you living in a nicer place? Probably not. Are you taking better vacations? Maybe slightly. Are you closer to financial independence? Be honest, probably not by much. Your savings account is bigger, sure, but that's about it. You're 5 years older and essentially living the same life with a bigger safety net you're still too afraid to use. How does that feel? Really sit with that feeling. That's comfort. That's safety. That's what you're choosing every day. Now imagine a different 5 years. You took some calculated risks. You invested in skills that increased your income. You started a side business that grew into a real revenue stream. You bought a property that appreciated and generated cash flow. You made some moves that didn't work out, sure, but you learned from them and adjusted. 5 years from now in this version, you're 5 years older, but you're financially in a completely different place. You have multiple income sources. You have assets that are growing in value. You have skills that command higher compensation. You have options. You can choose whether to work. How does that feel? Which version of your future self do you want to meet 5 years from now? Because you're building one of those two people right now with every choice you make. The truth about money that nobody wants to tell you is that it needs to move. Money is like water. When it flows, it's life-giving. It nourishes things. It creates growth. When it sits still, it becomes stagnant. It breeds mosquitoes. The wealthy understand money velocity. They understand that $10,000 moving through investments, businesses, and opportunities will generate far more wealth than $50,000 sitting in a savings account. This is deeply counterintuitive to how most people think about money. We've been taught that the goal is to accumulate it, get it and hold it. But that's not how wealth is built. Wealth is built by circulation, by deployment, by putting money to work. Think about the cash in your wallet right now. It's not earning anything. It's just paper. Now think about that same cash in the hands of an entrepreneur who uses it to buy inventory that he sells for a profit. That same $100 just became $130 in a week. The entrepreneur takes that $130 and does it again. Now it's $169. He does this 50 times a year. That $100 has generated returns of thousands of %. Same money, different velocity. The entrepreneur didn't have more money than you. He just moved it faster. This is how real estate investors build massive wealth with relatively little capital. They're not rich when they start. They're smart about velocity. An investor buys a property for $200,000 with a $40,000 down payment. She rents it out, and after the mortgage, taxes, insurance, and maintenance, she's cash flowing $300 a month. Not a lot, right? But here's what's really happening. That property is appreciating, let's say 4% a year, which is $8,000 of equity growth she didn't have to work for. The tenant is paying down her mortgage, which is another $4,000 a year in forced equity. And she's getting that $300 a month in cash flow, which is $3,600 a year. So her $40,000 investment is generating about $15,600 a year in total return between appreciation, mortgage paydown, and cash flow. That's a 39% return. Meanwhile, your $40,000 sitting in savings is generating maybe 1% or $400. The investor makes $15,600. You make $400. Same amount of capital, different velocity. But here's where it gets really interesting. In year 2, the investor uses the equity she's built plus some additional savings to buy another property. Now she has 2 properties generating returns. By year 4, she has 4 properties. The compound effect of velocity means that within a decade, that original $40,000 has turned into a portfolio worth over $1 million, generating 6 figures a year in income. Your $40,000 has turned into $44,000. This is not a story about real estate specifically. This is a story about money velocity. The medium doesn't matter as much as the principle. Money that moves creates wealth. Money that sits creates the illusion of security. So how do you increase your money velocity? First, you have to change how you think about capital. Stop thinking about money as something to protect and start thinking about it as something to deploy. Every dollar you have should have a job. It should be working towards something. Earning a return, building a skill, creating leverage, generating cash flow. The moment you shift from accumulation mindset to deployment mindset, everything changes. Second, you need to understand the difference between good circulation and bad circulation. Spending money on consumption is circulation with no return. You buy a new TV, the money moves, but you get no financial return. That's not velocity, that's just spending. Good circulation is when money moves through vehicles that generate returns. You invest in a course that increases your skills, which increases your income. You buy equipment for a business that generates profit. You invest in an asset that appreciates or produces cash flow. The money moves and comes back bigger. That's velocity. Third, you need to get comfortable with recycling capital. Wealthy people don't let money sit idle after a win. They pull it out and redeploy it. They sell a business and immediately invest the proceeds into new opportunities. They refinance properties to pull out equity and buy more properties. They take profits from one investment and seed another. The money never stops moving. This is how you build momentum. One good investment leads to capital for 2 investments, which leads to capital for 4 investments. But this only works if you keep the money moving. Let me share another real scenario with you, and I want you to listen to the decision-making process here because it illustrates everything we've talked about. 2 guys, both 32 years old, both with about $25,000 saved up. One of them, let's call him James, decides to keep his money in savings. He's proud of the $25,000. It took him 4 years to save it, and he feels like he's finally being responsible. His plan is to keep adding to it until he has $50,000, which feels like a really solid emergency fund. The other guy, David, looks at his $25,000 differently. David is sitting at his kitchen table with his laptop open, looking at his bank account. $24,712. He's thought about this money every day for the past month. Part of him wants to leave it alone. It's the most money he's ever had. His dad always said you should have 6 months of expenses saved up, and this is almost exactly that. But David keeps thinking about his friend Mike, who bought a rental property 2 years ago, and how Mike just bought his second property using the equity from the first one. David has run the numbers about 100 times. There's a duplex for sale 3 miles from the university, $215,000. He can get an FHA loan with 3.5% down, which is about $7,500. Closing costs will be another $6,000. First month's rent to cover any gap, another $3,000. Small repairs and getting it rent ready, maybe $4,000. Total out of pocket, around $20,000. That would leave him with less than $5,000 in the bank. His hands are actually sweating thinking about it. He calls Mike. Hey man, can I ask you something about that first property you bought? How did you know it was the right move? Mike laughs. I didn't know. I was terrified. I almost backed out twice. David is quiet for a second. What if I can't find tenants? What if something major breaks? What if I lose my job and can't cover? David sits with that for 3 days. He makes a spreadsheet of every possible thing that could go wrong and assigns probabilities and costs to each one. Then he makes a spreadsheet of the likely outcomes if things go reasonably well. The second spreadsheet looks a lot better than the first one. He makes the offer. It gets accepted. He spends the next 45 days completely stressed out during the escrow process, convinced he's making a huge mistake. He closes on the property. He finds tenants within 2 weeks. The first year is stressful. He has to replace some plumbing. He has to deal with a noise complaint. But at the end of year 1, the property has appreciated about $9,000. The tenants have paid down about $3,200 of his mortgage, and he's cash flowed about $1,800 after all expenses. His $20,000 investment just generated about $13,000 in year 1. That's a 65% return. James, meanwhile, added another $5,000 to his savings account that year. He now has $30,000 and he feels great about it. He's on track for his $50,000 goal. He has no idea that his need for security just cost him $13,000 in year 1 and will cost him hundreds of thousands over the next decade as David builds a real estate portfolio. Same starting capital, different relationship with risk, different understanding of money velocity. Now I want to be clear about something, because I know what some of you are thinking. This isn't about being reckless. This isn't about gambling your rent money on cryptocurrency or quitting your job with no plan to follow your passion. That's not intelligent risk. That's just being impulsive. What we're talking about here is calculated deployment of capital into opportunities with asymmetric risk profiles. That's a fancy way of saying opportunities where you can lose a little but gain a lot. Asymmetric risk is the secret to wealth building that nobody talks about. Poor people avoid asymmetric opportunities because they focus on the possibility of loss. Wealthy people hunt for asymmetric opportunities because they focus on the ratio of potential gain to potential loss. Let me explain what I mean. Imagine I offer you a bet. You give me $1,000. We flip a coin. Heads, you lose your $1,000. Tails, you get $1,100 back. Would you take that bet? Most people wouldn't. The potential loss and potential gain feel too close together. There's not enough upside to justify the risk. That's symmetric risk. The gains and losses are proportional. Now imagine I offer you a different bet. You give me $1,000. We flip a coin. Heads, you lose your $1,000. Tails, you get $100,000 back. Would you take that bet? Of course you would. Everyone would. You're risking $1,000 to potentially gain $100,000. That's asymmetric. The potential upside absolutely dwarfs the potential downside. This is the only kind of risk worth taking when you're building wealth, and this kind of opportunity is more common than you think. You just have to train yourself to see it. Starting a business is an asymmetric opportunity. Let's say you start a service-based business with $5,000. You build a website, get some basic tools, maybe pay for some ads or networking events. Worst case, you lose $5,000 and some time. That's the downside. What's the upside? You could build a business that generates $50,000 a year in profit, or $500,000. Or you could sell it for $1 million in 5 years. The potential upside is unlimited. The downside is capped at your initial investment. That's asymmetric. Buying a skill through education or coaching is asymmetric. You invest $3,000 in a course that teaches you copywriting. Worst case, you don't apply what you learn and you're out $3,000. What's the upside? You learn a skill that allows you to freelance and make an extra $30,000 a year. Over a decade, that $3,000 investment generates $300,000 in additional income. Massively asymmetric. Buying options or equity in early-stage companies is asymmetric. You invest $10,000 for a small percentage of a startup. Worst case, the startup fails and you lose $10,000. Happens all the time. What's the upside? The company succeeds and your equity becomes worth $1 million or $10 million. It's unlikely, but the potential return is so large that it justifies the risk. This is how venture capitalists think. They know most investments will fail, but the ones that succeed will return 50 times or 100 times their money. And that makes up for all the losses. The problem is most people never learn to evaluate risk this way. They've been taught that risk is binary, safe or dangerous. So they avoid anything that feels risky, even when the math overwhelmingly favors taking the risk. Let me give you a framework for evaluating asymmetric opportunities. First, what's the maximum you could lose? Be realistic and specific. Not what could go wrong if a meteor hits the Earth, but what's the actual likely worst-case financial loss? Second, what's the realistic best-case return? Not the fantasy outcome where everything is perfect, but the plausible good outcome. Third, what's the probability of each? You're not going to get this exactly right, but take your best guess. Is there a 50% chance of losing your capital? 20%? 5%? Is there a 10% chance of a great outcome? 40%? Once you have these three pieces of information, you can calculate the expected value of the opportunity. Here's a simple example. You're considering investing $10,000 in a business venture. You estimate there's a 30% chance you lose the whole $10,000. There's a 50% chance you break even or make a small return. Let's say you get $12,000 back. And there's a 20% chance things go really well and you make $50,000. So your expected value calculation looks like this. 30% chance of losing $10,000 is negative $3,000. 50% chance of making $2,000 is $1,000. 20% chance of making $40,000 is $8,000. Add those up and you get an expected value of $6,000. That means on average taking this bet is worth $6,000 to you. Even though there's a real chance you lose money, the math says you should take this opportunity all day long. Most people never do this calculation. They just feel the fear of the 30% chance of loss and say no. And by saying no to every opportunity with any risk of loss, they guarantee they'll never build significant wealth. Because there is no path to wealth that doesn't involve some risk of loss. None. The question isn't whether to take risks. The question is which risks have math that favors you. So where are these asymmetric opportunities in your life right now? They're everywhere once you learn to see them. Can you invest in learning a high-income skill? That's asymmetric. Can you start a side business with minimal capital? That's asymmetric. Can you negotiate your salary or switch to a higher paying role with commission potential? That's asymmetric. Can you buy an asset that generates cash flow? That's asymmetric. Can you invest in a friend's business for a small equity stake? That's asymmetric. Can you create content or intellectual property that could generate passive income? That's asymmetric. Every single one of these opportunities has capped downside and unlimited or very large upside. And every day you don't take one of these opportunities is a day you're choosing to stay exactly where you are. What asymmetric opportunity have you been avoiding because you're focused on the downside instead of the ratio? What would it take for you to shift your evaluation from how much could I lose to how asymmetric is this opportunity? Because I promise you, the moment you start filtering opportunities through the asymmetric lens instead of the safety lens, you'll see possibilities you've been blind to your entire life. Let's talk about skill stacking. Because this is one of the most powerful asymmetric opportunities available to anyone regardless of where you're starting from. You don't need capital to stack skills, you just need time and intention. Skill stacking is the practice of combining multiple moderately developed skills into a unique package that commands exponentially higher value than any single skill alone. The math here is counterintuitive but powerful. One expert-level skill in most fields will earn you a good living. But 3 moderately developed skills that complement each other will often earn you a fortune. Here's why. Specialists compete with other specialists in a crowded market. There are thousands of great graphic designers, thousands of competent accountants, thousands of skilled project managers. When you're competing in a pool of specialists, you're competing on price and reputation, and there's always someone willing to work for less. But when you combine skills in unusual ways, you create a category of one. You're no longer competing with anyone because nobody else has your exact combination. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine someone who's a decent graphic designer. Not the best, maybe a 6 out of 10. On her own, she's competing with millions of other designers and probably charging $50 to $75 an hour for freelance work. Now imagine she also learns to code. Again, not expert level, but solid enough to build functional websites and web applications. Now she's a designer who can also implement her designs in code. That's less common, and she can probably charge $100 to $150 an hour. But she doesn't stop there. She also learns marketing and copywriting. She understands conversion psychology, SEO, how to write persuasive copy, how to run ad campaigns. Now what is she? She's not a designer. She's not a developer. She's not a marketer. She's all 3. She's someone who can design a beautiful website, build it herself, and drive traffic to it with marketing campaigns that actually convert. How many people can do all 3? Very few. What can she charge? $300 an hour? $500? Maybe she doesn't even charge hourly. Maybe she charges $20,000 per project because she's delivering complete solutions, not just pieces. Or maybe she uses this skill stack to build her own online businesses because she doesn't need to hire anyone else to handle the core functions. This is skill stacking, and it's available to everyone. You probably already have 1 or 2 skills from your career or hobbies. The question is, what complementary skills could you add that would create a unique combination? Are you good with numbers? Add communication skills, and now you're a financial advisor who can actually explain complex topics in plain English. That's rare and valuable. Are you a good writer? Add data analysis skills, and now you're someone who can create content backed by research and metrics. That's worth more than either skill alone. Are you technical? Add sales skills, and now you're someone who can build the product and sell it. Most technical people can't sell. Most salespeople can't build. Do both and you're irreplaceable. The beauty of skill stacking is that you don't need to become an expert in each skill. You need to be competent in each and excellent at combining them. The combination is where the value lies. This is also why the phrase jack of all trades, master of none has it completely backwards in the modern economy. Specialists are getting commoditized by AI and global competition. Generalists with complementary skill stacks are becoming the most valuable players, because they can operate across domains and connect dots that specialists miss. So here's the exercise. Write down the 3 skills you're best at right now. Don't overthink it. What can you do better than the average person? Now look at those 3 skills and ask yourself, what type of problems could I solve, or what type of value could I create if I combined all 3? Can you see a market opportunity that needs exactly this combination? If not, what 4th skill could you add that would make the combination extremely valuable? Maybe you're good at teaching, writing, and video editing. That's a perfect stack for creating online courses. Maybe you're good at fitness, nutrition, and psychology. That's a perfect stack for high-end coaching. Maybe you're good at coding, design, and understanding small business operations. That's a perfect stack for building SaaS products for local businesses. Once you identify the skill gap, the skill that would complete your stack and make you uniquely valuable, that becomes your learning focus, not random education. Strategic skill acquisition. You're not learning for the sake of learning. You're building a specific capability that has a specific economic value. This is how you invest in yourself asymmetrically. You might spend $2,000 and 6 months to learn that fourth skill. But that fourth skill, when combined with your existing 3, might allow you to command 5 times your current income. That's asymmetric. And here's the really powerful part about skill stacking. Skills compound. The fourth skill is easier to learn than the first because you've already built learning systems and confidence. The fifth skill is easier than the fourth. Within a few years, you can have a skill stack that's so unique and so valuable that you essentially have no competition. You've created a personal monopoly. Nobody does exactly what you do, exactly how you do it. And when you have a personal monopoly, you set your price. You choose your clients. You build wealth on your terms. Think about the highest earners you know personally. Not celebrities, but people in your actual network who make serious money. How many of them are pure specialists? I'm willing to bet most of them are skilled generalists. They can do multiple things well, and they've figured out how to package those skills into something unique and valuable. That's not an accident. That's how the game works, and you can play it starting today. Now let's talk about a fundamental identity shift that has to happen if you're serious about building wealth. You have to stop thinking of yourself as an earner and start thinking of yourself as a capital allocator. This sounds like semantics, but it's actually the difference between building a decent income and building generational wealth. Earners trade time for money. Allocators deploy capital for returns. Earners think about how much they make per hour, per year, per project. Allocators think about return on investment, capital efficiency, and portfolio construction. When you're an earner, your financial decisions are simple. How do I make more money? How do I keep expenses low so I can save more? How do I protect what I have? Your entire orientation is around the income statement. Money comes in from your job, money goes out for your life, and whatever's left over is success. The problem with this mindset is that it scales linearly at best. You can increase your hourly rate. You can work more hours, but there's a ceiling. There are only so many hours, and there's only so much anyone will pay you per hour. When you're an allocator, your financial decisions are completely different. How do I deploy this capital for maximum return? What's the opportunity cost of each dollar? How do I build systems that generate returns independent of my time? What does my portfolio of assets look like? Your entire orientation is around the balance sheet. It's not about how much you make. It's about what you do with what you make. This mindset scales exponentially because returns compound and leverage multiplies. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. An earner makes $100,000 a year. She saves 10%, which is $10,000. At the end of the year, she's proud that she saved $10,000. Her net worth increased by $10,000. That's the earner mindset. She measures success by accumulation. An allocator makes $100,000 a year. He also has $10,000 at the end of the year after expenses, but he doesn't save it. He deploys it. He uses $5,000 to take a course in sales and negotiation. That course helps him increase his income by 20% the following year, which is an additional $20,000. He uses the other $5,000 as a down payment on a small rental property using leverage. That property cash flows $200 a month and appreciates 5% in year 1. His $10,000 deployment in year 1 generated $20,000 in increased income plus $2,400 in cash flow, plus potential appreciation on a property he now owns with equity. His net worth didn't increase by $10,000. It increased by significantly more, and he built income-producing assets in the process. Same starting income, same amount of capital after expenses, completely different outcomes because of completely different frameworks. The earner asks, how much can I save? The allocator asks, how can I deploy this capital for maximum return? The earner measures success by account balance. The allocator measures success by return on investment and asset accumulation. The earner seeks safety. The allocator manages risk. You cannot build significant wealth with an earner mindset. You can build a comfortable life. You can build security, but you cannot build wealth. Wealth requires allocation, deployment, leverage, and compound returns, all of which require you to think like an allocator. So how do you make this shift? First, you start evaluating every dollar as capital, not as money to spend or save. Capital has one job: to generate returns. When you're deciding whether to buy something, the question isn't, can I afford this or do I want this? The question is, what return will this generate? If you're buying a new laptop, the question is, will this laptop allow me to generate more income, learn new skills, or build something valuable? If yes, it's an investment. If no, it's consumption. Both are fine, but you need to know which category you're in. Second, you start building a portfolio mindset. You don't have a job. You have a portfolio of income-generating assets, and your job is one of those assets. Maybe it's your biggest asset right now, but it's not your only asset, and it shouldn't stay your biggest asset forever. What other assets are you building? Do you own any real estate? Do you own any equity in businesses? Do you own any intellectual property? Do you have any cash-flowing side businesses? Do you have any skills that generate income outside your job? If the answer to all of these is no, then you don't have a portfolio. You have a single point of failure. That's incredibly risky. An allocator builds a diversified portfolio of assets. Third, you start thinking in terms of capital efficiency. This is how much return you generate per dollar deployed. If you invest 10. Fourth, and this is critical, you separate your identity from your income. When you're an earner, you are your income. I'm a $70,000 a year person. I'm a middle-class person. I'm someone who makes X. Your income defines you. When you're an allocator, your income is just one data point. It's how much capital you have to deploy this year. If you make $70,000 and spend $50,000, you have $20,000 in deployable capital this year. That's the number that matters, not the $70,000, the $20,000. What are you going to do with that $20,000? That's the question. Your identity isn't $70,000 earner. Your identity is investor, business owner, asset builder, capital allocator. This identity shift changes everything. It changes how you view your job. Your job isn't your career. Your job is a capital generation machine. Its purpose is to generate deployable capital. This takes a lot of emotional charge out of work. You stop tying your self-worth to your job title or your boss's opinion of you. The job is a tool, a means to an end. The end is generating capital to deploy. It changes how you view expenses. Every expense is either an investment or consumption. Investments go in one mental bucket. Consumption goes in another. You don't judge either one, but you're very clear about which is which. You're intentional about your consumption and strategic about your investments. It changes how you view opportunities. You stop asking, can I afford this? You start asking, what's the ROI? Can I afford this is an earner question. What's the ROI is an allocator question. They lead to completely different decisions. Most importantly, it changes your trajectory. Earners build income and maybe some savings. Allocators build income, assets, equity, systems, and optionality. After 10 years, the earner has a bigger salary and a bigger savings account. The allocator has multiple income streams, a portfolio of appreciating assets, and financial independence. Not because they made more money, but because they deployed it better. So let me ask you directly. Are you operating as an earner or an allocator? When you get money, what do you do with it? Do you think about saving it or deploying it? Do you measure your success by how much you have or by what your assets are generating? Do you have one income source or many? Do you think about your job as your identity or as a capital source? Your honest answers to these questions will tell you which mindset you're operating from. And if you don't like the answers, that's good news, because mindsets can be changed. Let me give you a practice script for making this shift. Starting today, every time money comes into your life, whether it's your paycheck, a bonus, a tax refund, a gift, anything, I want you to pause for 60 seconds and ask yourself 3 questions. Question 1. How much of this is deployable capital after I cover my essential expenses? Question 2. What's the highest return opportunity I have access to right now? Question 3. What's stopping me from deploying at least half of this capital into that opportunity? Write down your answers. Don't just think them, write them. Do this every single time money comes in. Within 30 days, you'll notice your relationship with money has fundamentally changed. You'll stop seeing money as something to hoard and start seeing it as something to deploy. That shift alone is worth tens of thousands of dollars per year in better decisions. Let's talk about manufactured luck, because this is where things get really interesting. You've probably noticed that some people seem to get all the lucky breaks. The right opportunities fall in their lap. They meet the right people. They're in the right place at the right time. And you might think, well, they're just lucky. I'm not that lucky. But that's not how luck actually works. Luck isn't random. It's engineered, There's a formula for luck, and it's shockingly simple. Luck equals preparation multiplied by exposure. Preparation is skills, knowledge, and readiness. Exposure is how many opportunities, people, and situations you encounter. Most people optimize for preparation and minimize exposure. They get really good at their job, but they stay in their lane. They build skills, but they don't put themselves in situations where those skills could lead to opportunities. So they're prepared but unexposed. No luck is generated. The people who seem lucky do the opposite. They maximize exposure. They take more meetings. They go to more events. They reach out to more people. They apply for more opportunities. They put their work out into the world. They create more surface area for luck to land. And because they're also reasonably prepared, when opportunity does knock, they're ready to capitalize on it. From the outside, it looks like luck. From the inside, it's just math. More exposure equals more opportunities, equals more outcomes that look lucky. Let me tell you about how one person engineered a $3 million opportunity through systematic exposure. This guy, Trevor, was a mid-level operations manager at a tech company, making about $90,000 a year. Decent job, but he was ambitious. He wanted to do something bigger. But he wasn't a developer. He didn't have a brilliant startup idea. He wasn't well connected. What he did have was a system. Trevor decided he was going to meet 100 people in his industry over the next year. Not networking in the sleazy sense, just genuine relationship building. He made a list of people he wanted to learn from. Founders, investors, executives, senior people doing interesting things. He reached out to each one with a simple message. I'm learning about this space and I really admire what you're doing. Could I buy you coffee for 20 minutes? No pitch, no ask, just curiosity. About 30% said yes. That's 30 coffee meetings over a year. During each meeting, he asked great questions. He was genuinely curious. He took notes. He followed up. He provided value when he could, making intros, sharing articles, offering to help with small things. Most of these meetings led nowhere directly. They were just interesting conversations. But he was systematic about it. After each meeting, he wrote down what he learned and who he met, and he'd occasionally follow up to stay in touch. Around month 8, he had coffee with a founder who mentioned she was struggling to find someone to run operations for a new division of her company. She needed someone who understood systems and scale, but who wasn't a typical corporate operator. Someone entrepreneurial. Trevor's ears perked up. That sounds like an interesting challenge, he said. What are you looking for exactly? They talked for another hour. She asked if he'd be interested in the role. He said he'd think about it. She made him an offer the next week. Base salary of $140,000, which was nice, but the real kicker was equity. 0.5% of the company vested over 4 years. Trevor took the role. The company grew aggressively. 3 years later, it got acquired. Trevor's equity was worth $3.2 million. From the outside, it looks like Trevor got incredibly lucky. Right place, right time, right conversation. But zoom out and look at the system. He created 100 opportunities for luck to happen by systematically meeting people. He was prepared with skills and readiness. He was generous and curious, so people liked him. And when one of those 100 exposures turned into a real opportunity, he was ready to capitalize. That's not luck. That's manufactured serendipity. So how do you manufacture your own luck? First, you increase your surface area for opportunity. This means putting yourself in more situations where things could happen. Go to industry events. Comment on people's LinkedIn posts. Send cold emails to people you want to learn from. Apply for opportunities even if you're not perfectly qualified. Share your work publicly. Join communities. Volunteer for stretch projects. Every single one of these actions increases the probability that something good happens. You're not looking for a guarantee. You're increasing probabilities. Second, you follow up. This is where most people fail at manufacturing luck. They go to an event, meet someone interesting, and never follow up. They have a good conversation and let it die. Luck is in the follow-up. Send the email. Schedule the coffee. Make the introduction. Stay in touch. The vast majority of opportunities come from second and third touches, not first meetings. Third, you create information asymmetry. This means you know things other people don't know, or you know them earlier. How? You read more. You talk to more people. You pay attention to trends before they're obvious. When you have information asymmetry, you can see opportunities that are invisible to others. This is how early adopters make money. They don't have better opportunities. They see the same opportunities earlier. Fourth, you position yourself strategically. You go where the opportunities are. If you want to work in tech, you should probably be in San Francisco, Austin, or New York. If you want to work in finance, you should be in New York or London. If you want to be in entertainment, you should be in Los Angeles. Geography matters, but it's not just physical geography. It's also digital geography. Are you in the right online communities? Are you following the right people? Are you part of the right groups? Are you where the interesting conversations are happening? Fifth, you become the type of person opportunities flow to. This is about reputation and generosity. Are you known for being helpful? For following through? For being competent and low drama? For being generous with your knowledge and connections? People want to work with people like this. They want to offer opportunities to people like, what would it look like if you spent the next year systematically engineering luck? Who would you meet? What would you learn? Where would you position yourself? What information asymmetry would you build? What reputation would you cultivate? And if you did all of that, what's the probability that something meaningful happens? Not guaranteed, but much higher than if you stay home, stay in your lane, and hope luck finds you. Because it won't. Luck doesn't find people. People create conditions for luck to emerge. That's the game. Are you playing it? Now let's talk about something that might be uncomfortable, but it's necessary. The liabilities masquerading as assets in your life. You probably have expenses that you've justified to yourself as necessary, reasonable, or even investments. But when you run the actual numbers, they're wealth destroyers. The big obvious one is your car. Here's what most people think their car costs. The monthly payment. If you're paying $400 a month, you think your car costs $4,800 a year. But that's not even close to the real cost. The real cost includes the payment, sure, but it also includes insurance, gas, maintenance, registration, depreciation, and opportunity cost. Let's run the real numbers on a typical car. Monthly payment, $400. Insurance, $150 a month. Gas, $150 a month. Maintenance and repairs, average about $100 a month over time. Registration and fees, average about $60 a month. That's $860 a month or $10,320 a year. But we're not done. The car is also depreciating. If you bought it for $30,000, it's going to be worth maybe $20,000 in 3 years. That's $10,000 in depreciation over 3 years, or about $3,300 a year. So the real cost of your car is not $4,800 a year. It's $13,620 a year. Now let's talk about opportunity cost. That $13,620 a year, if invested at a 10% return, would be worth $237,000 in 15 years. That's the real cost of your car, not the payment. $250,000 in opportunity cost. Now, I'm not saying don't have a car. I'm saying be honest about what it costs. And maybe ask yourself, do I need a $30,000 car, or would a $15,000 car that costs $7,000 a year all in work just fine? Because the difference, $6,620 a year, is worth $115,000 in 15 years. That's real money. That's retirement. That's a down payment on real estate. That's startup capital for a business. The same logic applies to housing. Your house might be the biggest liability you have, even though everyone calls it an asset. If you live in it, it's not an asset. An asset puts money in your pocket. Your house takes money out of your pocket. Mortgage, property tax, insurance, maintenance, utilities, HOA fees if applicable. It all adds up to significantly more than your mortgage payment. And while the house might appreciate, you can't access that appreciation without selling or borrowing against it. In the meantime, you're paying all those costs. I'm not saying don't buy a house, but be clear-eyed about the decision. You're not buying an asset. You're buying a lifestyle. That's fine if it's intentional. It's not fine if you think you're making an investment. Then there are the small liabilities that add up. Subscriptions, streaming services, apps, software, gym memberships you don't use, subscription boxes, premium tiers of things you barely touch. Go through your credit card statement and add up every single recurring charge. I guarantee it's more than you think. The average person has 12 to 15 subscriptions costing somewhere between $30 to $50 a month each. Let's say you have $500 a month in subscriptions, and half of them you don't even use regularly. That's $250 a month or $3,000 a year in pure waste. Over 15 years at 10% returns, that $3,000 a year is worth $52,000. You're paying $52,000 for streaming services and apps you barely use. I'm not saying become a minimalist monk who owns nothing. I'm saying audit your liabilities. Really look at what you're spending money on and ask, is this moving me toward wealth or away from it? Is this an investment in my life quality that's worth the cost? Or is this just something I signed up for once and forgot about? Most people never do this audit. They just let lifestyle inflation happen. They make more money and automatically spend more money, and they never build wealth because the gap between income and expenses never widens. Here's the audit process. Take last month's credit card and bank statements. Categorize every expense as either essential, lifestyle, or investment. Essential is things you need to survive. Housing, food, basic transportation, healthcare. Lifestyle is things that make your life enjoyable but aren't necessary. Entertainment, nice clothes, eating out, hobbies. Investment is things that should generate a return. Education, books, tools for business, networking events. Now add up each category. For most people, lifestyle is shockingly high and investment is shockingly low. That's the problem. The goal isn't to eliminate lifestyle spending. The goal is to be intentional about it and make sure it's not crowding out investment. A good rule of thumb is the 50-30-20 rule, but modified. 50% of after-tax income to essentials, 20% to lifestyle, 30% to investment and wealth building. Most people are at 50% essentials, 40% lifestyle, 10% investment. That's why they're not building wealth. That extra 10% shifted from lifestyle to investment is the difference between retiring comfortable and retiring wealthy. So here's the challenge. Do the audit. Find 3 liabilities you can eliminate or reduce. Don't just save that money. Redeploy it. Take the money you were wasting and put it towards something that generates returns. A course, a business expense, an investment, a down payment fund, whatever makes sense for your situation. But make the swap explicit. I was spending $300 a month on things I don't value. Now I'm deploying $300 a month into things that build wealth. That one change, sustained over time, is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's a day-by-day micro-challenge for week 1 of your liability purge. Day 1, Monday. Pull up your bank and credit card statements for the last 3 months. Just look at them. Don't analyze yet. Just familiarize yourself with where your money actually goes. Day 2, Tuesday. Highlight every recurring charge. Subscriptions, memberships, automatic payments. Count how many you have. Most people are shocked by this number. Day 3, Wednesday, for each subscription. Write down when you last used it and how much value it provides. Be brutally honest. Day 4, Thursday. Cancel 3 subscriptions you haven't used in the last month. Do it today, not tomorrow. Today. Day 5, Friday. Calculate how much those 3 cancellations save you per year. Multiply the monthly cost by 12. That's your annual savings. Now multiply that by 15. That's the opportunity cost. Day 6, Saturday. Decide where you're going to redeploy that capital. Open an investment account, or add it to your course fund, or put it toward your business. Make the decision concrete. Day 7, Sunday. Review the week. How did it feel to cancel those subscriptions? Are you missing them? Probably not. That's the point. Most of what we pay for is invisible waste. Let's talk about buying time, because this is one of the most underrated investments you can make. Time is the only truly scarce resource. You can make more money. You can't make more time. And yet most people treat their time as if it's worthless. They'll spend 3 hours trying to fix something themselves to avoid paying someone $50 to do it in 30 minutes. That's insane math. If you make $40,000 a year, your time is worth about $20 an hour. If you make $80,000 a year, your time is worth about $40 an hour. But that's just your average value. Your time spent on high-leverage activities, the things that actually move the needle on your income and wealth, is worth much more, maybe hundreds of dollars per hour. So when you spend 3 hours fixing your toilet to avoid paying a plumber $150, you're not saving money. You're losing it. Those 3 hours could have been spent on a side project, learning a skill, building a business, or just resting so you can be more effective at your high-value work. The plumber would have fixed it in an hour. You spent 3 hours and did a worse job. You just paid $200 in opportunity cost to save $150 in real cost. That's a bad trade. Wealthy people understand this instinctively. They buy back their time aggressively. They hire people to clean their house, mow their lawn, do their taxes, manage their schedule, handle routine tasks. Not because they're lazy, because they're optimizing for high-value use of time. Every hour they buy back is an hour they can spend on activities that generate significant returns. But this isn't just for wealthy people. This is for anyone who's serious about building wealth. You have to start buying back your time now, even in small ways, and deploying that time into wealth-generating activities. Let's say you make $50,000 a year. Your hourly value is about $25. You spend 5 hours a week on household chores, cleaning, laundry, errands, yard work. That's 260 hours a year. If you could pay someone $15 an hour to do those tasks, it would cost you $3,900 a year. That might sound like a lot, but think about what you get. 260 hours back. What could you do with 260 extra hours per year? You could build a freelance business. You could learn a high-value skill. You could work on a side project that generates income. You could network and build relationships that lead to opportunities. If you used even half of those hours, 130 hours, on income-generating activities, and you generated just $50 per hour of value from those activities, you'd make $6,500. You spent $3,900 to buy back your time, and you generated $6,500 by deploying it well. You're up $2,600, plus you have a new income stream or skill that continues to pay dividends. Most people never make this trade because they think about the expense, but not the opportunity. They think, I can't afford to pay someone to clean my house. But they're not asking, can I afford not to? What's the cost of doing it myself? What else could I be doing with that time? Those are the questions that matter. So here's a framework for deciding when to buy back your time. First, calculate your effective hourly rate. Take your annual income and divide it by 2,000, which is roughly how many working hours there are in a year. That's your baseline hourly value. Second, identify low-value tasks you currently do. These are things that don't directly contribute to your income, growth, or well-being. Chores, errands, administrative tasks, routine maintenance. Third, estimate how much time you spend on these tasks per week. Fourth, find out how much it would cost to outsource those tasks. Fifth, calculate the delta. If your time is worth $40 per hour and you can outsource a task for $20 per hour, that's a $20 per hour profit every time you make that trade. You should make that trade all day long. Now the critical part. When you buy back time, you have to actually deploy it into something valuable. If you hire a house cleaner and then spend the freed up time watching Netflix, you just made a bad trade. But if you spend it building skills, generating income, or doing something that meaningfully improves your life, you made a great trade. This is why buying back time is asymmetric. The cost is fixed and knowable. The upside is unlimited. It depends entirely on what you do with the time you buy back. What are you doing right now that someone else could do for less than your time is worth? Cleaning, yard work, data entry, scheduling, bookkeeping, basic administrative tasks. Make a list. Then start systematically buying back that time. Start small if you need to. Hire someone once a month to deep clean your house. Use a grocery delivery service. Pay for an oil change instead of doing it yourself. Each of these trades buys you back hours. Then, and this is non-negotiable, deploy those hours into wealth building. If you buy back time and waste it, you just prove the skeptics right. But if you buy back time and use it to learn, build, create, and grow, you prove the model works. And once you prove it to yourself on a small scale, you can scale it up. Here's a 14-day time buyback challenge. Day 1. Calculate your true hourly rate. Income divided by 2,000. Write it down. Day 2. Track every hour of your day. What are you actually doing with your time? Day 3. Identify the 3 lowest value activities that consume the most hours. Day 4. Research how much it would cost to outsource each of those 3 activities. Day 5. Pick one to outsource. The one with the biggest time savings for the lowest cost. Day 6. Hire someone or sign up for a service to handle that task. Actually do it today. Day 7. The first time that task gets done without you, notice how it feels. Day 8. Take the hours you bought back this week and deploy them into one high-value activity. Learn something, build something, create something. Day 9. Calculate the ROI. How much did outsourcing cost versus how much value did you create with the freed time? Day 10. If the ROI is positive, double down. Outsource a second low-value task. Day 11. If the ROI is negative, analyze why. Did you actually deploy the time well, or did you waste it? Day 12. Commit to deploying bought-back time only into high-value activities for the next 30 days. Day 13. Review your time tracking from day 2. How much has changed? Day 14. Plan which task you'll outsource next week. Let's shift gears and talk about systems. Because everything we've discussed so far assumes you're still trading time for money at some level. Even if you're buying back time and deploying it well, there's still a ceiling. There are only so many hours in a day. The only way to truly break free from the time for money trade is to build systems that generate value independent of your active participation. This is the difference between having a job and having a business. This is the difference between being well paid and being wealthy. A system is any repeatable process that generates an outcome. A business is a system. A rental property is a system. A digital product that sells while you sleep is a system. An investment portfolio is a system. Content that generates ad revenue or affiliate commissions is a system. Each of these things can generate income or build wealth without requiring your constant active involvement. That's the key. You set it up once, maintain it periodically, and it runs. The path from where most people are to financial independence is fundamentally about transitioning from selling your time to building systems. This doesn't happen overnight. It's a progression. Most people start by selling their time through a job. That's phase 1. Then they get better at their job or switch to a higher paying job. Their hourly value increases. That's still phase 1, just optimized. Phase 2 is when you start building leverage. You take on a role where you manage people or processes, and your output is multiplied by a team. Or you start a side business where you're still doing the work, but you're capturing more value because you own it. Phase 3 is when you build systems. You hire people, automate processes, create products, buy assets that work without you. This is where wealth happens. Most people never get past phase 1. They optimize their salary, they save some money, and they hope it's enough when they retire. Some people get to phase 2. They become managers, executives, successful freelancers. They make good money, they build a comfortable life, but they're still trading time for money, just at a better rate. Very few people make it to phase 3. And that's not because phase 3 is harder. It's because they don't know it exists, or they're too afraid to make the transition. So how do you build systems? You start by looking at what you currently do and asking, what part of this could run without me? Let's say you're a freelance graphic designer. Right now, you trade your time for money. A client hires you, you design something, you get paid. That's phase 1. To get to phase 2, you could hire a junior designer to handle routine work, while you focus on client relationships and high-value design. Now your time is leveraged. You're managing, not just doing. To get to phase 3, you could create a design agency with multiple designers, a project manager, and a salesperson. Now you're not designing at all. You're building and managing a system that delivers design services. The business runs and generates profit whether you're working that day or not. That's a system. Or let's say you're a consultant. Phase 1 is trading your time for consulting fees. Phase 2 is hiring other consultants and taking a percentage of their fees. Phase 3 is creating a consulting methodology, training other people to deliver it, and franchising or licensing that methodology. Now you've built a system. You're earning from other people delivering your methodology. Or let's say you're good at something and you want to build wealth from it. Phase 1 is doing the thing for money. Phase 2 is teaching other people to do the thing for money. Phase 3 is creating a digital course or training program that teaches people to do the thing and it sells without your involvement. Now you've built a system. The pattern is the same across every domain. You start by doing, then you do with leverage, then you build systems that do without you. Each phase requires different skills. Phase 1 requires execution. Phase 2 requires management and delegation. Phase 3 requires systems thinking and building. Most people are good at phase 1. Some are good at phase 2. Very few develop the skills for phase 3. But those skills can be learned. Here's what systems thinking looks like. You stop asking, how do I do this? You start asking, how could this be done repeatedly without me? You document processes. You create checklists. You identify what can be automated. You figure out what requires human judgment and what doesn't. You hire for the things that require human involvement. You automate the things that don't. You build feedback loops so the system improves over time. You create metrics so you know if it's working. You treat the system itself as the product, not the output of the... Let me give you a real-world example of someone building a system from scratch. This woman, Jennifer, was a personal trainer. She was good at her job, made about $60,000 a year, but she was maxed out on time. She could only train so many clients per week. That's phase 1. She wanted to scale but didn't know how. She started documenting everything she did with clients. The assessments, the workout programs, the nutrition guidance, the check-ins, everything. She created templates and systems. Then she hired 2 other trainers and trained them on her methodology. She took a percentage of their fees. That moved her to phase 2. Her income went up to about $80,000 because she was capturing value from 2 additional trainers, but she was still actively involved in managing them and handling client relationships. Then she made the leap to phase 3. She took all her documentation and created an online training platform. Video workouts, nutrition plans, progress tracking, community support. She charged $30 a month for access. She spent about $10,000 building the platform and creating the content. The first month, she signed up 20 people. $600 barely covered her costs, but she kept refining it, marketing it, improving it. By month 6, she had 300 members. $9,000 per month. By month 12, she had 800 members. $24,000 per month. Her active involvement was now about 10 hours per week managing the platform and community. She was making almost $300,000 a year from the digital system, plus she still had her in-person training business. That's a system. It runs largely without her. It scales infinitely. Each new member costs her almost nothing to serve. That's phase 3. Here's a 90-day system building roadmap. Days 1 through 30, identify and document. What do you do that has repeatable value? Document every step of your process. Create the manual for how someone else could do what you do. Days 31 through 60, build leverage. Hire someone, create a digital product, automate a process, or find a way to multiply your output without multiplying your time. Days 61 through 90, systemize and scale. Turn your leverage process into a system that can run with minimal involvement from you. Test it, refine it, scale it. Let's talk about something that makes people uncomfortable. Debt. You've been told your whole life that debt is bad. Stay out of debt. Pay off your debt. Debt is slavery. And for consumer debt, credit cards, car loans for depreciating assets, that's true. That kind of debt is wealth destroying. But there's another kind of debt, and it's one of the most powerful wealth building tools available. Strategic debt used to acquire appreciating assets or cash flowing systems. Here's the fundamental principle. If you can borrow money at 6% and invest it in something that returns 12%, you should borrow as much as you possibly can because you're making a 6% spread on someone else's money. This is how real estate investors build massive portfolios. This is how private equity firms buy companies. This is how wealthy people get wealthier. They use leverage. They use other people's money to amplify their returns. Let me show you the math with a simple real estate example. You want to buy a rental property for $200,000. Option 1, you save up $200,000 and buy it in cash. The property appreciates at 4% per year and generates $6,000 a year in net cash flow. Your return is 4% appreciation, which is $8,000, plus $6,000 in cash flow, equals $14,000 total on your $200,000 investment. That's a 7% return. Not bad. Option 2, you put down $40,000 and borrow $160,000 at 5% interest. Same property, same appreciation, same rent. The property appreciates 4% on its full value, which is still $8,000, but you only invested $40,000. The cash flow is $6,000 minus $8,000 in interest payments on the loan, so you're actually negative $2,000 per year in cash flow initially. But the tenant is paying down your mortgage principal, which adds about $3,200 per year to your equity. So your total return is $8,000 in appreciation, minus $2,000 in negative cash flow, plus $3,200 in mortgage paydown, equals $9,200 on your $40,000 investment. That's a 23% return. Same property. Much better return because you used leverage, but it gets better. Because you only used $40,000 instead of $200,000, you have $160,000 left. You could buy 4 properties with leverage instead of 1 property with cash. Now you're making 23% on 4 properties. Your total returns are 4 times higher, and you control 4 times as much real estate. This is the power of leverage. You multiply your capital efficiency. Now I know what you're thinking. What about risk? What if the property value drops? What if you can't rent it? What if interest rates rise? These are all real risks, and this is why you don't use leverage recklessly. You use it strategically. You make sure the property cash flows even in a down market. You keep reserves for vacancies and repairs. You lock in fixed-rate debt so interest rates can't hurt you. You buy in markets with strong fundamentals. You don't over-leverage. But when you manage these risks properly, leverage is incredibly powerful. The same principle applies to business. If you can borrow $50,000 at 8% to start a business that generates 20% returns, you should borrow the money. You're making a 12% spread. If you can use a business line of credit to buy inventory that you'll sell for a 50% margin, you should use the credit. You're making a 42% spread after paying interest. This is how businesses grow fast. They use other people's money to scale. The key distinction is borrowing to buy appreciating assets or income-producing systems versus borrowing to fund consumption. Borrowing $20,000 for a new car that will be worth $12,000 in 3 years is terrible debt. You're paying interest on a depreciating asset. Borrowing $20,000 for a down payment on a rental property that will appreciate and generate cash flow is great debt. You're paying interest on an appreciating asset. One makes you poorer, one makes you wealthier. So how do you use debt strategically? First, you build your borrowing capacity. This means maintaining good credit, building relationships with banks, establishing a track record of borrowing and repaying. Your borrowing capacity is an asset. It's dry powder. It's optionality. When the right opportunity comes along, you want to be able to access capital quickly. Second, you only use debt for purchases that will generate returns greater than the interest rate. If you can't articulate how this debt will make you money, don't take it. Third, you stress test. What happens if income drops? What happens if values drop? What happens if interest rates rise? Make sure you can survive the worst-case scenario. Fourth, you maintain reserves. Never use debt to the point where you have no cushion. Always keep cash reserves for emergencies. When you use debt this way, it becomes a tool, not a trap. It becomes something that accelerates your wealth building, not something that drags you down. And you start to understand why wealthy people borrow money even when they have cash. Because using someone else's money to make money is always better than using your own, as long as the math works. What opportunity exists in your life right now where strategic debt would make sense? A property you could buy with a mortgage? A business you could start with a loan? Equipment or education you could finance that would generate returns? And what's stopping you from using leverage? Is it a real risk assessment, or is it just fear dressed up as prudence? Because those are very different things. Here's a practice conversation script for evaluating whether to use strategic debt. Sit down with a piece of paper and interview yourself. Question 1. What asset or opportunity am I considering? Be specific. Question 2. What would it cost to acquire this with debt? Include the down payment, interest, and all carrying costs. Question 3. What returns will this asset generate? Be conservative. Include appreciation, cash flow, or income increases. Question 4. What's the spread between my cost of capital and my expected returns? If I'm borrowing at 6% and expecting 15% returns, that's a 9% spread. Question 5. What's the worst-case scenario? What happens if my projections are wrong? Question 6. Can I survive the worst-case scenario without catastrophic loss? Question 7. What's my exit strategy if things go badly? Question 8. On a scale of 1 to 10, how confident am I that this makes mathematical sense? If you can answer all 8 questions clearly and the math works, you probably have a good case for strategic debt. If you're fuzzy on any of them, keep researching. Now we're getting near the end, and I want to talk about the most expensive decision you'll ever make. The decision to wait. To wait until you're ready. To wait until you have more money saved. To wait until you know more. To wait until the timing is better. To wait until you feel confident. Every day you wait costs you money. Real money. Let me show you how much. Imagine 2 people. Both are 25 years old. Both start investing. Person A starts investing $5,000 per year at age 25. Person B waits until age 35 to start, but then invests $5,000 per year. Both invest until age 65. Both get the same 10% annual return. How much does Person B's 10-year delay cost them? Person A invests for 40 years. $5,000 per year at 10% becomes about $2.2 million. Person B invests for 30 years. $5,000 per year at 10% becomes about $900,000. The 10-year delay costs Person B $1.3 million. Person A only invested $50,000 more total, $5,000 per year for 10 extra years, but ended up with $1.3 million more because of compound growth. That 10-year delay cost over $1 million. That's the cost of waiting. But it's not just about investing in the market. It's about every wealth-building action, starting a business, buying real estate, learning high-income skills, building systems. Every year you delay starting, you lose the compound effects of that action. If you start a business at 28 instead of 38, you have 10 more years of growth, learning, compounding, and building. That could easily be the difference between a modest success and a life-changing outcome. So why do people wait? Fear disguised as prudence. They tell themselves they're being responsible. They're being careful. They're waiting until they're ready. But really, they're just afraid. Afraid of failing. Afraid of losing money. Afraid of looking stupid. Afraid of the unknown. And they let that fear cost them millions. The truth is, you'll never feel ready. There will never be a perfect time. You'll never have all the information. You'll never have zero risk. If you wait for those conditions, you'll wait forever. The people who build wealth are the people who move forward with incomplete information, with imperfect readiness, with real fear, and they do it anyway. They start before they're ready. They figure it out as they go. They make mistakes and adjust, and they end up miles ahead of the people who waited for perfect conditions. There's a principle called the 70% rule. If you have 70% of the information you think you need, and you're 70% confident in the decision, you should move forward. Waiting for 90% or 100% means you're moving too slowly. In the time it takes you to get to 100% certainty, the opportunity is gone, or someone else has taken it, or the conditions have changed. 70% is enough. The rest you learn by doing. So what have you been waiting to start? What wealth-building action have you been delaying until you feel ready? And what's the real reason for the delay? I want you to be brutally honest with yourself. Is it a legitimate strategic reason, or is it fear? Because if it's fear, you need to know that fear is costing you more than failure ever could. The cost of trying and failing is bounded. You lose some money, some time, some ego. The cost of never trying compounds forever. Let me tell you what your future self wants you to know. Your future self 10 years from now is looking back at this moment. If you take action now, your future self is grateful. You changed their life. You gave them options, freedom, wealth, opportunities. If you wait, your future self is disappointed. Not angry, just sad. Because they can see clearly now what you can't see today. That the thing you were afraid of wasn't that scary. That you were more capable than you thought. That the opportunity was real. And that the cost of waiting was enormous. Which future self do you want to meet? The one who's grateful or the one who's disappointed? Because you're building one of them right now with every choice you make. Every day you delay is a vote for the disappointed version. Every day you take action, even imperfect action, is a vote for the grateful version. Here's my challenge to you. 72 hours. You have 72 hours from finishing this audiobook to take one concrete action toward building wealth. Not a perfect action. Not a big action, just one action. Enroll in a course. Reach out to someone. Apply for an opportunity. Make an offer on a property. Start a side project. Open an investment account. Whatever the thing is you've been avoiding, you have 72 hours to start it. Not finish it, just start it. Because starting breaks the inertia. Starting proves to yourself that you can move. Starting puts you in the game, and here's what's going to happen. You're going to start, and it's going to feel uncomfortable. Your amygdala is going to fire. You're going to question whether you're doing the right thing. That's normal. That discomfort is not a sign you're making a mistake. It's a sign you're growing. It's a sign you're leaving your comfort zone. It's a sign you're doing something that matters. Lean into it. Then something interesting happens. You take the first step, and the second step becomes visible. You couldn't see it before because you weren't in motion. But once you start moving, the path reveals itself. You meet someone who knows someone. You learn something that opens a door. You discover an opportunity you didn't know existed. This is how it works. You don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to take the first step. Let me give you specific 72-hour action plans for different situations. If you're an employee who wants to increase income, here's your 72-hour plan. Hour 1, update your resume and LinkedIn. Hour 12, identify 3 companies or roles that would pay you 20% more. Hour 24, reach out to someone who works at one of those companies. Hour 48, apply to at least one position. Hour 72, schedule a coffee meeting with someone in your target industry. Done. You've taken action. If you want to start a side business, here's your 72-hour plan. Hour 1, choose one specific service or product you could sell. Hour 12, create a simple one-page offer describing what you do and for whom. Hour 24, reach out to 10 people who might need your service. Hour 48, set up a way to accept payment. Hour 72, deliver value to your first customer, even if you charge them nothing just to get started. Done. You've taken action. If you want to buy real estate, here's your 72-hour plan. Hour 1, get pre-approved for a mortgage. Hour 12, Identify 3 neighborhoods or markets you're interested in. Hour 24, tour 5 properties in person or virtually. Hour 48, run the numbers on the best 2 properties. Hour 72, make an offer on 1 property, even if it's low. Done. You've taken action. If you want to learn a high-income skill, here's your 72-hour plan. Hour 1, identify the skill that would most increase your earning potential. Hour 12, find 3 courses or programs that teach that skill. Hour 24, enroll in 1. Hour 48, complete the first module or lesson. Hour 72, apply what you learned to a real project or problem. Done. You've taken action. The specific plan doesn't matter as much as the commitment to action within 72 hours. No more research, no more thinking, no more planning. Just do something, anything, because motion creates momentum, and momentum creates results. Now let's talk about what happens after you start, because this is where most people fail. They take the first step, it gets hard, and they quit. They go back to their comfort zone. They tell themselves it wasn't the right time or the right opportunity, but really they just couldn't handle the discomfort. So we need to build relapse proofing into your wealth building plan. Here's what relapse looks like. You start a side business. The first month is exciting. You're making progress. You're learning. Then month 2 hits. You have a bad week. A client complains. You don't make as much money as you hoped. You get tired. It stops being fun. The voice in your head starts. Maybe this isn't for you. Maybe you should just focus on your job. Maybe this was a mistake. You start working on it less. You stop taking it seriously. By month 3, you've basically quit. You tell yourself you gave it a shot, but you're actually back in your comfort zone. That's relapse. Or you buy a rental property. The first few months are fine. Then you have a bad tenant, or a major repair, or a vacancy that lasts longer than expected. Suddenly you're stressed. You're losing money. You regret the decision. You think about selling. You tell yourself real estate isn't for you. That's relapse. Or you start investing seriously instead of just saving. The market drops 15%. Your portfolio is down. You panic. You think about selling everything and going back to cash. That's relapse. Relapse happens because you hit discomfort and interpret it as a sign that you made a mistake. But discomfort is not a sign of a mistake. Discomfort is a sign of growth. Every successful person has gone through the same discomfort. The difference is they didn't quit when it got hard. They expected it to get hard. They planned for it. And when it happened, they pushed through. So here's your relapse proofing plan. First, expect discomfort. Literally write this down. Things will get hard. I will want to quit. This is normal. When I feel like quitting, I will not quit. I will pause, assess, and adjust, but I will not quit unless the math clearly says this was a bad decision. Just naming it in advance dramatically reduces the power it has over you. Second, build accountability. Tell someone what you're doing. Not everyone. Pick one person who will hold you accountable. Someone who won't let you quit when things get hard. Check in with them weekly. Report your progress. Be honest about struggles. Their job is to remind you why you started when you forget. Third, track leading indicators, not just results. Results log. You might not see income for months, but you can track actions. Did you reach out to 10 people this week? Did you create content? Did you have conversations? Did you learn something new? Those are leading indicators. They predict results. When results are slow, leading indicators keep you motivated. Fourth, schedule regular reviews. Every 30 days, sit down and review. What's working? What's not? What do I need to change? This is not a decision about whether to quit. This is a decision about how to adjust. You're not quitting. You're optimizing. Fifth, pre-commit to a minimum viable timeline. Before you start, decide how long you're going to stick with this before you evaluate whether it's working. 6 months? A year? 2 years? Write it down. Sign it. When you want to quit before that timeline is up, you refer back to your commitment. You don't quit before the timeline. Period. Sixth, celebrate small wins. You're not going to have big wins for a while, so you have to find the small wins and celebrate them. First dollar earned, first client, first month of positive cash flow, first 10 people who said yes to a meeting. Each of these is progress. Acknowledge it. Seventh, expect and plan for setbacks. You will have bad months, bad clients, bad investments, bad luck. This is not a sign you're failing. This is part of the process. Wealthy people have bad months too. They just don't quit because of them. When you have a setback, ask yourself, is this a fatal problem or just a painful problem? Fatal problems are rare. Painful problems are common. You push through painful problems. Let me give you a real example of relapse proofing in action. This guy, Tom, started a consulting business on the side. Month 1 was great. He signed 2 clients at $3,000 each. He thought, this is easy. I'm going to be rich. Month 2, one client was unhappy and asked for a refund. The other client delayed their project. He made $0. He felt like a failure. He wanted to quit, but he had a relapse-proofing plan. He'd committed to 1 year before evaluating. He had an accountability partner who reminded him that 1 bad month meant nothing. He tracked his leading indicators. He'd reached out to 20 new prospects that month. He'd had 5 discovery calls. Those were good numbers. Results would follow. He adjusted his sales process based on what he learned. Month 3, he signed 3 new clients. Month 4, 5 clients. By month 12, he was making $15,000 a month from consulting. If he'd quit in month 2, which he desperately wanted to do, he'd have nothing. His relapse-proofing plan saved him. Here's a relapse-proofing worksheet you should fill out before you start anything. Question 1. What am I committing to? Be specific. Question 2. What's my minimum timeline before I evaluate whether this is working? Pick at least 6 months. Question 3. Who is my accountability partner? Name a specific person. Question 4. What leading indicators will I track weekly? List 3 to 5 actions you can control. Question 5. What will I do when I want to quit? Write out your response in advance. When I want to quit, I will call my accountability partner, review my leading indicators, and remind myself why I started. I will not make any permanent decisions when I'm emotional. Question 6. What would have to be true for me to actually quit before my timeline? Write down the specific conditions. This should be a very high bar. Not I had a bad month. More like I've worked on this for a year. I've adjusted my approach 5 times. I've consulted with experts, and the math clearly shows this will never work. Question 7. How will I celebrate small wins? Be specific. What counts as a win? How will you acknowledge it? Fill this out before you start. Put it somewhere you'll see it. When you hit the point where you want to quit, and you will, pull it out and read it. Follow the plan. Don't make decisions based on temporary discomfort. Now let's talk about the final piece, which is building the life that makes wealth building sustainable. Because here's what nobody tells you. You can't hate your way to wealth. If you're miserable the entire journey, you'll quit. Or you'll succeed and realize the cost wasn't worth it. Wealth building has to be integrated into a life you actually want to live. It can't be all sacrifice and grinding. There has to be joy and meaning and connection along the way. This is where most hustle culture advice falls apart. It tells you to sacrifice everything, work 80 hours a week, ignore your health, neglect your relationships, and grind until you make it. And sure, some people do that and succeed, but most people burn out. Or they succeed and realize they destroyed everything that mattered in the process. That's not a win. So how do you build wealth without sacrificing your life? First, you integrate wealth building into your existing life rather than replacing your life with wealth building. You don't quit your job with no plan. You start a side business that grows while you keep your income. You don't stop seeing friends. You have coffee meetings with people who could become clients or partners. You don't give up hobbies. You find hobbies that build skills or relationships that contribute to wealth. Everything serves multiple purposes. Second, you optimize for sustainability, not intensity. A pace you can maintain for 10 years beats a pace you can maintain for 6 months. Working on your side business 3 hours every evening is not sustainable for most people. They burn out. But working on it 10 hours every weekend is sustainable. Find your sustainable pace and commit to it. Third, you build in recovery and enjoyment. You schedule time off. You do things purely for fun. You invest in experiences and relationships, not as a reward for later, but as part of the process. Because if you're not enjoying at least part of the journey, you won't finish it. Fourth, you measure success by more than money. Yes, you're building wealth, but you're also building skills, relationships, health, experiences, meaning. If you're only tracking dollars, you'll miss most of what matters. Track your energy. Track your relationships. Track your learning. Track your health. Wealth is just one metric. Fifth, you give yourself permission to adjust. If something isn't working, change it. If you're miserable, figure out why and fix it. You're not locked into any particular path. The goal is financial freedom so you can live the life you want. If you're sacrificing the life you want to get financial freedom, you're doing it backwards. Let me paint one final picture for you. It's 10 years from now. You're 10 years older. You took the ideas in this audiobook seriously. You shifted from saving to deploying. You got uncomfortable regularly. You built skills. You took asymmetric risks. You manufactured luck. You bought back your time. You built systems. You used leverage strategically. and you started immediately instead of waiting. What does your life look like? You have multiple streams of income. Your systems generate 6 figures a year without requiring all your time. You have assets that appreciate. You have equity in businesses. You have skills that command premium compensation. You have a network of high-value relationships. You have options. You can choose how you spend your time because your income isn't tied to your hours. You're not rich in the private jet sense, but you're financially free in the way that actually matters. You don't worry about money. You don't stress about job security. You can take opportunities because they're interesting, not because you need the paycheck. You've built the life that most people think is only available to the lucky few. But you know it wasn't luck. It was a series of uncomfortable choices compounded over time. That future is available to you. It's not guaranteed, but it's absolutely possible. The only question is whether you're willing to be uncomfortable enough to get there. Whether you're willing to deploy instead of save. Whether you're willing to take calculated risks instead of staying safe. Whether you're willing to start now instead of waiting until you're ready. Because if you are, everything changes. Your trajectory changes. Your possibilities change. Your future changes. You're at a decision point right now. You can close this audiobook, feel inspired for a day, and then go back to doing exactly what you've always done. Most people will do that. Or you can decide that this is the moment everything changes. That you're not going to be a saver anymore. You're going to be a deployer, a builder, an allocator. That you're going to get comfortable being uncomfortable. That you're going to take action in the next 72 hours. That you're going to bet on yourself. That choice is yours. Nobody can make it for you. But I can tell you that one choice leads to the same life you've always had. The other choice leads to a life you can't even fully imagine yet. Which one are you going to choose?